Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. The most dangerous form of corruption is when it's done paradoxically, completely legally. That is, it's hidden in plain sight. A rigged system designed to transfer wealth from ordinary people to a small number of oligarchs. Many don't realise this is now happening on a regular basis in India, where a rising oligarchy of billionaires, facilitated by a complicit Prime Minister, are slowly but surely taking control and ownership of India's economic crown jewels. Assets once owned by the Indian people are now passing into the hands of the ruling elite in a seemingly legitimate legal process. An inevitable process designed by a ruling elite who set the rules to ensure the same ruling elite remain, well, the ruling elite. To look at how they're getting away with this, I'm joined today by our regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal, MD. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thank you for joining us once again today.
Good morning, Angus. Waheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji ki Fateh. So, what we're talking, India's great infrastructure transfer, asset monetization, they use the word monetization, and emerging architecture of corporate power. So, a few days ago, India's finance minister introduced his plan that in the next 4 years, they are going to transfer public properties, public infrastructure to the private bidders. So it may be leasing, auction, or any legal method to do that. So what they're planning to do, government is basically, as we talked before, is economically failing. They are not able to keep up with the revenue is going down. What they're trying to use, trying to transfer the assets of public assets and using language that history ultimately uses to judge them. Policies presented as technical financial instrument often prove it in retrospect to be mechanism that quietly reconfigure the distribution of national power. India's large-scale infrastructure monetization, technically they are using the word monetization, but I understand auctioning the public properties, officially framed as a strategy to unlock value from public assets. So they are going to cash the value of that by transferring that to private enterprise. And the policy appears administratively rational. Yeah, they are getting money, lease mature public infrastructure, raise upfront capital, and redeploy funds toward a new development. Okay, this is on the paper for the people. What in practice is going to be, the program unfolds within an economic landscape already marked by extreme concentration of infrastructure capacity among a narrow group of corporate oligarchs. Okay, like Adani. Under these conditions, monetization risks functioning less as neutral fiscal management, more as a structural transfer of long-term economic control. So they are using technical language to give control of India's public institution to these people. So illusion, but the illusion of neutral auctions, okay? Assets will be auctioned, bidding will be open, valuation is formalized, contracts are public. So this is they are going to be telling the public. Infrastructure concession require enormous upfront capital. So who has this capital? Not people. Only few oligarchs have this capital. So even though it's displayed as a public transaction, but practically is steered towards a few people. Those people who had access to international financing markets like Adani, the corrupt people, tolerance of multi-decade regulatory exposure. So this transaction is not for one day, it will be decades before the fact is seen. Ability to absorb political and litigation risks. So they will be structured such way so they won't be sued, they won't be legally responsible. In India, only tiny number of corporate groups consistently possess these capabilities. While auctions may be formally open, they are structurally narrow. The appearance of competition masks a bidder pool that, in practice, oligarchs can afford it. Outcome is predictable. Repeated asset transfer to the same dominant players. Okay. So infrastructure is just not another sector. So this is going to hurt the people. The stakes extend far beyond profit margins. Controls over infrastructure mean control over the economic bloodstream of the nation. So they will have control of ports, determine the trade flow. So if they control the port, they will allow whose trade comes or not. Logistics corridor, they will shape supply chain, power transmission, control industrial reliability. They control the power, electricity. Only they will decide who gets it. Airport, define mobility networks, telecom, backbone structure, digital commerce. Okay. So all these things will give them more control than they have now, and the public is not realizing. When such systems concentrate under a small number of corporate umbrellas, the result is not merely private wealth accumulation, but systemic influence over national economic function itself. This is not privatization in the narrow fiscal sense, it's a structural power consolidation. Basically, these few powerhouses will control economy, and economy will give power, and they will use the power more and more in their favor, and more corruption. Before the people realize, it will be too late. Why is this happening? Fiscal pressure as the silent driver. The last 2-3 times we talked, this government is under fiscal pressure. They have no means left to solve this problem they created. The country's currency is 50% down compared to when they took over. They 37%, almost 40% money government gets is going to pay the debt. And to pay the debt, they had to borrow more money because they don't have. So now this is a creative solution they have found. But the solution they have found is not a solution. This is a whitewash to give control of country's economy to few people who have been financing their elections. So this monetization program historically surged not during periods of fiscal comfort, but during periods of constraint. So India's government, why is this happening? They are facing simultaneous pressure, maintaining ambitious infrastructure expansion, adhering to deficit reduction commitments, avoiding political costly tax increases because there's nothing left to tax people. People don't have more money, sustaining high growth expectations. So they can't do all the things they promise. So asset monetization, or we can say auctioning, leasing, provide an elegant political solution for them. But what is the truth? Short-term, immediate fiscal space and liquidity. It gives them window to cover it. Okay, they are doing a long-term. It's a surrender of future revenue streams and operational leverage. So you can see the long-term effect is countries' finances are given to few powerhouses. The state exchanges durable public control for immediate liquidity. Such exchanges are rarely neutral in their long-term political consequences. So now they have a parliament, they have a government structure, but when the finances are controlled by few people, they will control anybody. The person or the organization which control the purse control the everything. Structure advantage to these oligarch or the empires. India's largest infrastructure linked to these conglomerates operate not as an isolated company, but as a vertically integrated economic ecosystem. They combine logistic network, that's transfer, energy supply, transport infrastructure, warehousing system, digital platforms, financial arm. So what is left? They control everything that people use, okay? from the transport, the telephone, the energy, the warehousing, the travel structure. A port strengthens a logistics chain, a transmission line stabilizes an industrial corridor, airport feeds cargo into own distributions and channels. The systemic synergy enables aggressive bidding that smaller competitors cannot realistically match. So the result is not merely market success, it is accumulate dominance. So government knows all this, which is going to happen, but they are under pressure, they have no resources. And these people are the ones who have been funding the election for the last 10 years. So they have allegiance to them. They don't have allegiance to public. So look at this diagram. Oligarchy without conspiracy. So it looks very open public system. There's a public debate in the assumption that oligarch outcome requires corruption. They're not showing corruption, they know how to structure it. Modern oligarch concentration often emerges through entirely legal, procedurally correct and technically transparent mechanisms. So what they do, there'll be limited bid financing, there'll be weak regulatory enforcement, adjacent sector control, inevitable concentration. They will use all the legal network to hide these transactions like a legal transaction. They'll hide this corruption and give the control to the people who are their financiers. India is probably the only country, they issue now bonds to fund election money. They know the institute of Modi government because they are the largest beneficiary of that, and they don't disclose who gives the money. In US, if you give $100 for a political election, it's public record. Everybody knows it, okay? But over there, they don't open those books, even though opposition try, but people can't find out who gave those money, who bought those bonds. So this is showing long shadow of regulatory weakness. Infrastructure concession typically last decades over such time scales. Contract renegotiation is not the exception, but the norm. Traffic projections change, costs rise, demand fluctuates, political admissions rotate. In environments where regulatory enforcement is uneven, concessionaires gradually accumulate leverage. So they will have a revision of tariffs justified by economic necessity. Every now and then they will go with the government, the economic condition allow us to do that, and they will approve it. They will grant extensions on their contracts, whatever system they're using. Contractual reinterpretation will be used. The language will be framed in such a way that they can abuse it in future. So the power will shift steadily towards the operator away from the state. So the government control will diminish. The control of these oligarchs will be more and more. Public perception and the legitimacy trap. Rising tall. Citizens perceive increasing costs for access to essential services. Okay, you're driving, you have to pay toll on the highway, they'll increase 50 cents, 1 rupee. People will say, it's necessary because it's going up. But this is a structure. This is a structure in their acquisition cost. Private access to essential infrastructure. Public goods increasingly gated behind corporate ownership. To access all those things, people have to go through them. Concentration of national assets among a few corporate giants. Visible accumulation of strategic national resources in narrow hands. So if citizens perceive these conditions, then monetization ceases to be a fiscal policy and become a legitimate crisis. History shows that once infrastructure control is widely seen as captured by elite network, reversing that perception becomes extraordinarily difficult. Only some revolution or things like that can reverse it. Otherwise, these people have control for decades to come. the real risk or irreversibility. Highway lease, lost decades locking in access and toll structures. Transmission concession, the electricity we are saying. Logistics corridor, reshape industrial geography permanently. Political consequences visible. Structure ownership pattern already entrenched. By the time political consequences become visible, structure ownership patterns are already entrenched. At that stage, unwindly concentration become economically disruptive and politically near impossible. So even though people will know, government will know what they have done is bad, but they won't be easily able to reverse it, and people will have to put up with that for a long time. So such outcomes rarely announce themselves in a dramatic crisis. They emerge slowly, transactions by transaction, contract by contract, until the cumulative shift becomes unmistakable. By then, the transfer is complete. So let's look at this diagram. Key theme at a glance, okay? There's a fiscal pressure. We start here. There's a fiscal pressure on the top of the circle. The government needs the money. They will procedural openness. They will go in front of the public that they are doing this. And public will not be able to do anything because money they will be asking to transfer these assets. Only few industrial house or oligarchs will have it. Then there'll be regulatory weakness to shift the power. And the power, if you see that balance, power will tilt in the favor of these oligarchs. These contracts will be irreversible. Then there will be legitimate crisis. Public trust will be gone and public will not be able to undo it. So when they start the bidding, who will bid? 90% of the bidding can be done by few people. They are the only one who will have that kind of money. Bidder diversities, they will show all those things, yeah, it's open to public, but it's open to few people because only people who have that kind of big money can bid on this. And they will have a long-term contract where the contract will be 25 years and future government will say, oh, well, we have the contract, we cannot cancel it. So this is when only tiny number of corporate groups consistently possess the capital, financial access and risk tolerance required. The auction process, however transparent, produces oligarchs' outcome as a mathematical inevitability. So even though process will be looked fair, open, and all that nonsense, they will show to public, but it's basically transferring all the asset to the oligarch, and it will not be possible to reverse it easily, okay? Same thing, they will control the ports, they will strengthen the logistics, transport, they will control the freeways, more toll, they will have strategic control over the corridors of transport, and they will dominate the distribution system. The system synergy is the core mechanism of cumulative dominance. Each new concession does not merely add revenue, it multiplies the strategic value of every asset already had. Smaller competitors bidding on a single asset cannot replicate this compounding logic, making aggressive oligarchs bid structurally rational even at prices that appear uneconomic in isolation. So what basically it is that the prices required to acquire these assets will be only in the hands of a few people, few companies, few families. Basically, probably comes back to only a couple of people who have been financing the government, like Abani, Mr. Anil Abani, who's Jeffrey Epstein's friend, and Modi's friend, and Adani, who has been raising money at the Wall Street and then distributing corruptly to buy influence. And then he does not want to appear in the court in the US because he did the corruption and the crime. So these people now, the criminal enterprise will be given the control of India's economics. It's a tragic, very tragic situation. I do not know anything that people will be able to do and stop. The only one person has courage, that's Rahul Gandhi, but he does not have the voting strength, and I don't know all his people will stand with him. So they may even suspend his membership. The renegotiation ratchet, what will they do? Okay, contract is signed, then after some time they will renegotiate, okay, and the government gives them more concession. Then they say, we need a longer term because we're investing so much money. Yes, they will extend the contracts, extension will be granted. Service continually argument used to extend operator control. They will tell public, oh, we don't want to disrupt service. Then contractual reinterpretation. Then, the people will be say, oh, this is what is in the contract. Usually contracts are written in such a way that there's a room for reinterpretation. Market adjustment, framing shifts obligations away from the operator. Okay. Structured lock-in, operator leverage, entrench, unwinding become economically disruptive. So this process is already built in what they're calling monetization. So they know what they're doing, and the people who are going to give them money for that, they know. So both of them know this structure, but it's going to be hidden from the public. So the public will think it's fair and open process. Okay. So this is will happen. So these are if you have that slide open on the public, they have the assets. Right now we are here. Then slowly immediate fiscal condition will come in. There will be lost revenue to the government. Then there will be lost operations. Then regular erosions will come. By the time comes, I don't have a time scale. Sometime that the total control will be transferred to these families or these groups. Transfer completes itself quietly. Fiscal pressure mounts. Auctions open. Oligarchs buy the assets, lease it, or whatever the system is. It'll be structured legally as a very transparent thing, but it'll be basically auctioning to the higher bidder. Highest bidder is the corrupt money. Regulatory leverage will erode. Irreversibility sets in. So, condition for success versus failure. The program's outcome is not predetermined. It depends entirely on whether structural condition shift before the window for course correction closes. Danger is that each passing transaction narrows that window further, making the difference between these two scenarios harder to achieve with every concession word. So, in summary, if I use the words from Sikh history, so in Sikh history, there is a story of a Pai, Lalo, and Malak Pago. Malak Pago is an oligarch, today's definition, oligarch of that time, who was having feast to the people for his to hide his sins. And Guru Nanak goes there, and he does not go to his feast. He refuses to go there. He stays with the poor carpenter by Lalos, eats his bread and sleeps there. And Malak Pago sends his people to bring him forcibly and say, how dare you didn't come to my feast? Everybody, all sadhus, everybody, poor rich came here. And how can you defy that? And Guru Nanak said, look, he's not going to understand. It's just to explain people. I don't think we really think he did all these things. It was all explanation. He said, look, your bread has blood of these poor people. You're squeezing blood of these poor people to get this all wealth. And Pailalo, poor man, he's working, uh, he's sweating and he's doing the hard work. His bread has a milk in it. He has earned all this, so I prefer to do that. But this is a Brahman system, okay, RS system, BJP system. They prefer the Pago story. They like to do that demonstration of their wealth. The poor people, I think, who are bread earners, their blood is going to be squeezed more and more. There won't be anything left until people rise up again. And that is, I think, the writing on the wall.
So thank you, Dr. Grewal. That's a fascinating subject. And it's interesting that privatisation, which effectively is what this is a mechanism that we use a lot in the West. But there is a key difference, I think, certainly from what you set out here. Privatisation in the West, quite often we do sell our assets, even our public assets. I can think of several here in the UK, for example, that have been sold and offered into the sort of private industry for private shareholding companies to come and bid to purchase them. But the difference here, though, in India that you're highlighting is that key elements of India's infrastructure is being sold away from state ownership into private ownership through this process of privatisation. But ultimately, it's the purchasers, obviously from a very small pool of purchasers who have the financial ability to do this. They are, in fact, essentially private individuals. They're not large PLC, publicly listed companies. They're actually private individual billionaires, mates of Narendra Modi, in simple terms.
Yeah, if we conclude with the historical lens, Indian society is controlled by upper caste. There's a Brahmin on the top, and then there's business people in India they call Baniya. Okay, Baniya control the purse, the Brahmin control the life through religion. So they have controlled their society for thousands of years. And RSS is started by Brahman. Now RS is in charge of India's political future through BJP. RS is started by Brahman. Most of the time, always controlled by Brahman. Even the current head is a Brahman. Only one time there was not. So the Brahman wants Hindu Rashtra. Now the Baniya says, okay, I have been funding you for so long. What is in there for me? I'm sending you all the money. So 10 years I financed your elections and all that. So now Baniya wants his share. So the Baniya is Anali, Abani, and the other partner. So they have come up for their share. So now through Modi, who's also kind of a weak Baniya, because they have been financing his elections. So the money control will be given to this Baniya community through Baniya community, but only to a couple of people or maybe 3 people. So they will control all the finances. Now the corruption will be magnified beyond imagination. They will control politics. Brahman will control the society from birth to death. Baniya will control the purse. So people will be borrowing money from the Baniya banks. Baniya will be blood-sucking kind of interest rates. Then poor people will have no option other to tolerate for a while until they can all get together and get rid of them. I don't know how long will that take, but they will suck the blood of poor as long as Adani Ambani can, and the people like Modi can, they can put up in the front. So this is a structural change going back. Ever since we know Indian history, even when the Mughals came, the money control always stayed with this Baniya community. They know how to control the purse. So now I think after thousands of years, they are successfully controlling. Baniya always control the money. Now Brahman has taken charge of the Brahman, the new colonial, or as the new colonial rule, and Baniya is back in place controlling the money, which is a terrible situation for Indian population. And it's going to happen in daylight with a very legalistic structure So people will not be able to stop it. People who will open their mouth, they will be given something to shut them up. So this is the true story. I think the Brahman Baniya coalition is back in place and they control the power. They are the new colonial rulers and terrible situation for India.
And it's probably a fair assumption that with the establishment of Khalistan, that the governance model of Khalistan will have a very different view on, for example, state ownership of infrastructure assets. It is highly unlikely under the governance model of Khalistan that they would allow such an incestuous, corrupt relationship to exist, and therefore it is unlikely in Khalistan that any state assets would then be sold off in such a manner.
If we follow Guru's example, when we have a Khalistan has to take care of Pailalo, okay? The poor people, not the Pagos. The Sikhi is for the benefit of ordinary man, the one who toils, the one who generates all the wealth, not the people who control it, not the Malk Pagos. If we follow that tradition, this will not happen there. And I think we talked a couple of times before, the high successful economic countries, why they are successful, because they have people are willing to pay taxes, they trust the government, there's openness in the society, there's a tolerance, and all those things. All those high successful things which make the countries economically successful are present in Sikh teachings, Confucius teaching, Martin Luther teaching. They are very similar. So they are for the benefit of ordinary people, not for centralized government of the few. I think people are not understanding. Sikh is for public. Sikh is not for few people. Okay. Sometimes people see one or two corrupt people, current Punjab situation. No, that is not a Sikh. That is controlled by these Brahminical society. When the true Sikh government takes place, Sikh principle, government constitution is based on Sikh principle, this will not happen.
Yeah, fascinating. And unfortunately there we must leave it, but we will indeed talk again with Dr. Groel soon to continue this very discussion. Dr. Groel, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Angus. I hope you stay safe. Hopefully some common sense will come to this world and maybe things will get better. Thank you.
Indeed, I have no doubt they will. And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.